Good evening and welcome to tonight's Facebook Live Q&A session. And tonight we're going to be looking at the question that was posed by Andrea in regards to how do I stay happy in business. So for tonight we're going to be looking at this question. We're also going to be looking at any other questions that you guys have in regards to growth, profitability and sustainability and how to make your business even better than it is today. So please feel free to put your questions into the chat box, and what we'll look to do is trying to get around to those towards the end of the first part of this session. Because obviously one of the key things we're looking to try and build here is, alongside the great sense of community that's already started in the group, and I'm really pleased at how much everyone's really interacting, but also be able to make this a place of learning so that we can all learn from each other and the opportunities that are available to us. So tonight we're going to be looking at this kind of key question that Andrea asked of me about how I can keep quite positive, especially when it comes down to like being in business and things. In the future, we're also going to hear from other members of the group. I've already started talking to David Marsh, who's going to be looking at how he can provide a little bit more information around psychometric profiling and how he can make it work for your business, and some of the traps that you can fall into if you don't do it correctly. So stay tuned for that. It's probably going to come in November. I've just got to arrange a date and a time with him yet. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes, wait for other people to actually jump onto the call. It's great to see you there, Biggie and Helen. Nice to see you guys right there from the start. Again, any questions that you have, please raise them. Quite happy to go through and answer them tonight, because that's the whole point of having these Q&A sessions, is that we have this ability to be able to ask questions and hopefully get some good answers. And if I can't give a real answer, then what I will do is I will say, okay, I don't have an answer for these things, but what I'll also commit to you guys is to go away and actually try and find an answer for you. And if I can't find an answer, I'm pretty sure someone within my network will have the answer, because at the end of the day, I'm only human and we can only do so much, and I can agree that with most people it's only so much that we can actually achieve by ourselves. So having the ability to actually reach out to a wider range of people to get some of those key answers is crucial to be able to make things move forwards. And that's kind of what I try to do most of my time, is to actually leverage the network and the expertise I have around me, because I know that actually when it comes down to making a success happen, it's not just because of me, but it's because of the power of the network that I've built around me, and all those wonderful people and the knowledge that they have and their expertise and their experience. And that's actually kind of key in making things happen, is to be able to utilize lots of people's experience. Good evening, Frank. Great to see you on the call this evening. Please feel free to post any questions you have, and what we'll do towards the end of this session is make sure we try and get all those answered as we go along. You may be wondering why I keep looking to the side. Am I being a bit shifty or something? No, it's just the setup. I've got 3 monitors around here, and it's the monitor over on this side that's actually showing me the questions as they're coming through. So if you do see me look from side to side from time to time, it's just to make sure I can see what is going on there. So without further ado, let's move forwards and actually start to answer that kind of key question that Andrea posed in regards to how do I maintain the pace that I keep, and how do I keep the energy high, and how do I keep my kind of happiness going. And there's like a whole variety of different reasons, and a lot of people say all anchors on your why, and your why is a really big thing to do with it, because if your why is big enough, the reason why you do things is big enough, then it will move mountains. You can make it so that you can overcome anything, because you've got the motivation and you find the stamina coming in from there. Now, everyone says this, everyone tells you this is kind of one of the key secrets, and I 100% agree with it. But at the end of the day, there are those days where you are just going to feel down, or something's going to happen where kind of impacts you, and you kind of think, okay, how do I deal with this? And for me, there are a few techniques I've learned that can really help give you that little boost, that kind of pep, that kind of moves you kind of forwards. And what I thought I'd explore with you is actually to open the kimono a little bit, show a little bit of my system in regards to some of the things I teach. Now, I have a couple of different systems that I help people with. Now, one of them is my leader success system, which is kind of split into 5 key areas. And what we're going to do is just drill down into one, which is all around how you interrelate with people with the expert connection creator. Now, when we're looking at one of those sub-modules around how we kind of interrelate with people and how we kind of take on stimulus, etc., we look at specifically around communication and communication with people with the path to action. Now, the path to action isn't my model. It's actually a well-defined psychological model, which various different psychologists have produced different papers on. And what I've provided here is just a bit of an overview around it. And for many people, you may have already seen some of the details of this before, but this is kind of like the way that I apply this, as opposed to just being a vanilla model, effectively. So let's work through how we actually take action in our lives, and actually what does that mean. So, first of all, we all know there's some form of stimulus that happens. So we either hear something, see something, feel something. Something happens in the outside world that kind of registers to our body that something's changed or something's happened or something's going to happen. And this kind of triggers a number of things. And the first thing it triggers is our senses. Now, as we know, our senses are bombarded on a daily basis with hundreds, if not thousands of millions of different messages per hour, per minute, per second. And if our brain had to take in every single one of those little tiny bits of stimulus, it would be overloaded, because our brain actually works a lot slower than what our senses do. And this kind of gives us this challenge, because how do we know what's going on around us? How do we kind of feel it? How do we kind of interact with it? How do we kind of have that effect? And this is where the brain does some great work in the background. So what it does is it kind of makes some assumptions and it builds models of the world. So as our senses are providing bits of information, it's doing little bits of pattern matching in the background, kind of like the what people sometimes call the reptilian brain, the bit that's kind of the original part of our brain before we built our more logical thinking mind. And this kind of pattern matching system's going on in the background that then says, okay, so what's this a bit like? And I've heard this pattern matching piece described as being a giant Google, but do you guys remember the internet back in the late 90s, where there was a search engine called Alta Vista? I don't know if you guys remember it. Just give us a yes in the chat box if you remember Alta Vista. Anyway, with Alta Vista back in the day, it wasn't like Google, or like Google is today anyway. So in Google today, we type anything we want in, and it comes up with an answer. And we can use pretty much normal natural language to be able to find these bits of information. Now, in Alta Vista back in the day, this wasn't an opportunity to do that. We were literally in this position where we had to type exactly the phrase for it to have a chance of even potentially finding the things that I wanted it to find. And what it would normally bring up is a whole host of other bits and pieces. Now, that's a little bit like how our reptilian brain works, our primitive brain. It kind of is looking to pattern match all sorts of bits and pieces, but it's very, very primitive. So it makes lots and lots of assumptions and lots of mistakes. And this in itself kind of then raises to the fore a series of stories that basically it's kind of telling our brain, this is what's happened before, therefore we should take these actions. And some of these things are led back to our childhood, some of our first experiences, those kind of imprinted kind of items. So, for example, if you've had an experience by which you were told off or reprimanded because you did something bad, and all of a sudden you're in this situation where something bad has happened, your brain will pattern match those two things together and kind of throw up the scenario of what happened next. Now, for example, if you're a child and something bad happened, you probably got told off, you got reprimanded, and whatever case that was, you probably didn't feel that good about it. Therefore, your brain replays those feelings. It kind of reinforces those neural pathways that have already been built and says, here you go. That's how it feels, effectively, if you keep going, do what you're doing. And as such, that kind of changes your state. It changes how you feel, because now you start to feel the same way as you did before. You feel more apprehensive. You feel the worry that this is going to be coming your way. And as such, you then start to take action, because your brain's designed to do this. Because if you think about it, our brains were hardwired like back in the days when we used to get chased by saber-toothed tigers across the savannah, and as such, you didn't have too much time. You had to kind of react or be eaten. It's one of those kind of things where you had to quickly assess: is it a threat, is it a friend, or is it a food source? So is it going to eat us, kill us, eat us, or hump us effectively? And that's kind of the process your mind goes through to try and get through this. And therefore you straight away you react, and this is the kind of the fight, flight or freeze kind of syndrome that people go through. Now, what I found is that's not the only way, and this is documented. I mean, if you read crumbs, what's the book called? Chimp Paradox. That's a good book that actually describes. It's actually described in a few books, but what I kind of believe, what I've practiced is, if you start to feel those feelings, that runaway, the out of control, the tingling in your head, the kind of sweating of your palms, the kind of the feeling of your hair's going on, then any kind of feeling that is your automatic response. And if you kind of notice it and then actually calm your body down to feel it, understand that it's there, acknowledge it, and give your brain a couple of seconds to actually then say, how would I like to react to this? Then what you can find is there is no saber-toothed tiger today that's going to come along and try to eat you. So you can then act accordingly. And in most cases, when you actually engage the rational part of your brain, you kind of realise that there's nothing really to worry about. And actually, if that's the case, then you can actually be quite happy about it. You can become quite sanguine, quite calm and serene and relaxed, because there's nothing there that's going to kill you. And that, to me, is the secret of how I kind of stay very happy and stay very buoyant. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've had some fairly tough times when it comes down to running projects or in my own business, if you think of back in the day when I did my first hospital divestment, on that specific project, there was the risk of death. I mean, you literally were holding the lives of people in your hands. If you made a mistake, people could have died. And in those cases, you kind of have to double check everything. You think about everything. You make sure everything is right, because you put the appropriate amount of due diligence in to the effect that's going on there. Whereas today, with a lot of the other things that are going on in my life, the chance of danger of death happening is very, very low. If you teach somebody business skills, and unless their business is going to be something where it's going to put them in danger every single day, then the likelihood of you dying creating your business is quite low. In fact, I'm trying to think of any specific businesses that might have a more detrimental effect. I mean, possibly something to do with cave diving, maybe, or if you do something mining with great big bits of dynamite or something, that those could be possibilities. But those aren't jobs that you kind of come across every day, or certainly I don't anyway. So for me, being able to recognise these kind of effects that are happening in my body as we're going along tends to be the kind of key things that help drive me forward, making those kind of right decisions as we're kind of going forwards, and keeping it so that I can be happy, because I make a choice to be happy. And that's the key thing, is you have a choice every day. You have a choice to feel miserable or to feel happy. I choose happiness every single time. So hopefully that's kind of helped with the questions and kind of giving you a bit of an insight as to my kind of thoughts as to how you can stay a little bit more positive in business. I'd like to welcome tonight also Leela. It's good to see you on the call. I've just got my little phone here and just checking out who's coming in as they're joining the call here, which is nice to see. Now, let's move on to the next question. So one of the other questions that got posed into the group was by one of the joiners, who asked the question that they would like to explore new ideas of profitability. Now, I kind of was thinking about this question a lot, and thinking how's the best way of being able to answer this question, because it is a key thing. Because in business, you all remember the old adage, profit is sanity, cash flow is reality, and turnover is vanity. So if that's the case, then we need to make sure, to be sane, we need to be in a profitable business. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in quite a sticky position. I'm sure I'd agree, yes? Now, for that, there is only actually 4 ways of being profitable, and it's simple. And if you, as soon as you kind of recognise this model, and there's only these 4 ways, all of a sudden, when you're starting to explore how you can be profitable, you can kind of pin it back to one of these 4 things and actually think, is that the right direction? Am I doing the right thing, going in the right way? So, without further ado, let's go through what these 4 kind of methods are. So, the first of these 4 methods is where we look at just finding more customers, and most people do this. It's kind of like the number one thing that kind of comes to mind, and everybody has the same challenge. Can't find enough customers. Where do I find my customers? I need to expand my market. I need to bring in more people. I need to increase my marketing, etc. And it kind of is, it's the turn to effect, and there's a kind of a term when you start looking at this, between the difference between what's known as a hunter and a farmer. So when you're looking at like finding more customers, that's really you playing the hunter. You're out there, you're trying to find these people, and there's a whole host of tactics you can use to be able to make that happen. So that's one of the 4 key ways that you can use to be able to increase the profits in your business, is by just doing that one activity, and that's probably the first one that everyone turns to. Now, the second activity you can do, now this one, it might sound stupid, but the reality is you can do more sales, and you can do more sales with the people with customers and clients that you already have, the people that you're already within your network. And you do this by doing things like cross-selling or upselling, and that's basically the people that you've already got within your business. They already know, like, and trust you, otherwise they wouldn't be doing business with you in the first place. And as such, you've got this opportunity then to be able to offer them more services, serve them better, because at the end of the day, they probably have other problems, other questions that you might not be able to help with. And if you're asking them, what else can we help you with? What are your other problems? What are your pain points at the moment? What are you struggling with? Then it's more than likely they're going to come back and tell you. Now, obviously, like we said earlier, we can't do everything, right? But what we can do is where we can serve them with the best of our ability, we can do. Where we can't, we could always offer to recommend them to somebody else or introduce them to somebody, because then you're still acting as the trusted advisor. You're still giving them the best possible value. So, kind of the second thing here is just go for the more sales. Ask for it. There's a whole philosophy around something called going for no, and basically you just keep offering services to the problems that people have until people say no, I'm not interested anymore. So definitely do that. Take the approach that actually you've got so much to serve. You've got so much experience, so much knowledge. You've got such a wealth of things inside you. Then open that up and allow people to see what it is, and you'd be really surprised actually at what bits they'll probably take from you going forwards. Now, when we kind of think of other ways of being able to increase our profits in our business, the third kind of area we look at is the one that people kind of shy away from because they feel uncomfortable doing it, and that's in raising their prices. Now, prices are one of those interesting things, because there's a whole saying that the value is only worth as much as the person is willing to pay for it. But you'd be quite surprised actually how much people are willing to pay for certain services. And in the whole realm of business, you need to make sure that you're actually not undercutting yourself. If you look at people like John Lewis, for example, they have a slogan that says they're never knowingly undersold. Effectively, they are looking to hit that market point by which they're giving great value, but also bringing profits into their kind of partnership as well. And this is kind of really important and a key thing, because it's not just about you making a small amount of money. It's about you having the value that you derive. And in fact, I've worked with some clients where they will refuse to work for you because they think you're being too cheap. And what they'll be looking at is they're looking for the problems. And in fact, I've worked with some clients where we've gone back to vendors, etc., and asked them to reevaluate their quotes, because either their quote is so small, we believe they've missed something out, or they've not understood the brief in the first place. Because clients and customers aren't stupid. They know a good deal when they're looking for something, and they also know something that looks far too good to be true. So if you're offering your services at such a cheap rate that actually people are thinking, hang on, what is this? What am I buying into? Is it so cheap that actually it's worthless? Then you might be doing yourself a disservice, and you're certainly doing your customer a disservice. So definitely look at your pricing strategy and look at how you can raise your prices, especially doing this over time as you build up more value, more experience, and more great case studies of those wonderful works that you guys are already out there doing on a day-to-day basis. Now, our final kind of area. Before I do that, welcome Wendy. Great to see you on the call this evening. Please feel free to ask any questions as you're going through, and we'll get back to the questions towards the end. Anyway, coming back to where we're looking at with regards to profitability, the kind of like final and fourth area we'll look at in regards to profitability is the one that a lot of people turn to as soon as it's like cash flow issues start to happen, and that's around cutting costs. Now, it's one of those kind of things where be savvy about your money. So don't waste your money in various different areas, but cutting costs can sometimes be actually the wrong thing to do. And I can try and remember the story, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was a very famous story, I think it was for soap powder, where the whole idea of soap operas came from in the US. So back in the Second World War, there was a massive decline in people buying soap powders and things. So rather than cut the marketing, which is one of the key things that a lot of organisations do, what the soap company did is they increased their marketing, and what they found is that actually it helps increase their sales, because it increased the amount of people talking about the product, recognising the products, and actually being able to associate with the products for something that they needed. Now, this is sort of like one example of this, but there's various other examples when you're thinking about actually how you keep your business running. If you're kind of cannibalizing your back end, your kind of operation staff, your logistics staff, your delivery, your ability to be able to serve clients because you don't have enough cash flow coming through, or you don't have enough profit coming through, then what's going to happen is your clients are going to feel disserviced. They're going to feel like the quality of what you're delivering is going down. Now, this might sound quite obvious, but in the heat of the moment, you've got to kind of remember this when you're trying to look at where those operational savings can come in. And likewise, if you're cannibalizing the front end part of your business, the front of house, whether that's from sales or marketing or kind of those elements around customer service, then again, what you're going to find is that it'll start to constrict the amount of sales that you're making, and as such you'll be in a position where you don't have enough coming through the door to be able to service, to be able to then make a profit or turn a profit from it. So make sure that when you do look at your operational savings, you do make the right decisions for the right specific reasons. And it could be, for example, when you look at, for instance, comparing various different services, that you can find that actually you can get the same service from elsewhere and pay less for it, and not necessarily have to have a drop in the quality of what you're delivering on the back of that. It may be that you can consolidate, rather than using 2 or 3 services from different people or different organisations, you can bring them into one place. So as an example of this, and I'm not endorsing this as a product, but if you, for instance, had a small amount of stuff in ClickFunnels, small amount of stuff in Kajabi, a small amount of things inside Active Campaigns or something, and just wanted to consolidate into one product set for managing your membership, then you could get rid of some of the other products and just put the whole lot into something like Kajabi, and that would save you your ongoing costs of the other products that are in place. It also simplifies what you're doing. Now, simplification is a great way of being able to reduce your costs and still keep that high level of service you've got, because the more simpler you make your processes and your technology and the way that you're interacting with things, the less likely things are going to go wrong, and also the more likely that you'll be able to spot things as they do start to go awry. Because in many cases, complexity just kind of evolves over time, because you kind of build one thing and get something working in one direction, then quickly go to do something in a different direction, then go back to do something in another direction. Then you've got the workarounds that pair the things together, and before you know it, what was a very simple idea at the beginning becomes like a big bowl of spaghetti to try and unwind. And this happens in all sizes of organisations. I've worked with small businesses where they've found themselves in a real pickle because they've got like 4 or 5 different CRM systems, 10 or 12 different systems with regards to managing websites and things, with regards to personnel management. And then you kind of get to the big organisations where you have a thing called shadow IT, which is kind of things that's happening in the background that people just don't know about. And probably one of the best ones was a large transportation provider where we came across a whole document management system that had been written by a guy in the accounts department specifically because he didn't like the other systems. And when he left, all of a sudden all that knowledge had left with him. There was no way of being able to support this complicated beast that he'd pulled together. And the key thing was, this was actually one of the key systems that dealt with their accounts receivable, so basically how they can take money into the business. So keeping things as simple as you can, but no simpler, is the best kind of methodology you can think of when it comes down to kind of looking at some of those operational savings and cost reduction elements of it. Okay, so hopefully that kind of gives you 4 kind of key categories to look at when you're thinking, how can I become more profitable? And what you can do now is, as you're coming up with ideas, just think about, which one does it fit into? Is this a case of you being the hunter, you're going out there to find more customers? Is this you being the farmer and basically being able to harvest what's already in your client base? Is this you being the kind of savvy businessman where you're looking at actually how you can increase your prices in certain areas so they match the value that you're giving and they match the expectations in the marketplace? Or is this where you need to start looking at how you can simplify and make things easier and look to reduce your costs and then take a greater profit out of the business? Okay, so that kind of takes us through the kind of 2 key questions I was looking at that were prepared. Now let's go to the floor and see what we've got there. I can see Billy-Ann has joined as well, so welcome Billy-Ann, great to see you there. Okay, so I've got a question by Biggie, which is, I find it hard after 45 years in the corporate world to get structure in my day as an entrepreneur. Do you have any advice for me? Yes, absolutely. So when you were in the corporate world, you will have already had some kind of structure in your day, and I'm kind of guessing your structure would be in something along the lines of get up, get yourself ready for the day, commute into work, probably as soon as you get into the office, probably the first half an hour is getting your head together and making sure everything's in place. Then you've probably got a number of key meetings or a number of key deliverables that you will have diarised at that point. Probably some kind of lunch, I would guess a working lunch if you're in most organisations. That tends to be the case certainly if you've got an office-based role or a corporate-based role, and then finishing the day probably somewhere 6-7 o'clock if it's a professional day, and then commuting back home and with your evening routine. So as an entrepreneur, do something similar. Make sure you structure your day. So even if you don't have client meetings in the diary, or you're not speaking to suppliers, or you're not got anything else that you're dealing with that's specifically getting an external person involved, structure your day so that you block out the time that you need for doing things such as business development, research, learning and development, all those kind of key aspects that you need to do. So, I know I quickly went through it last time, but I'll give a bit of an overview of what my day looks like so you get an idea. So my day starts at about 5 o'clock in the morning. I'll get up, get myself ready, I'll go to the gym, make sure I look after me, because this body's the only thing I have. I don't think I'm going to get a second one. Medical science is not that good yet. We can replace parts but not the whole thing. So that's kind of where I start. I also do things such as meditation, I do reading, I do goal setting, visualization, affirmations, just to make sure that I've got myself set up and ready for the day. While I'm having my second breakfast, under the new regime with that, I may end up having 6 meals a day. So this is meal number 2, or second breakfast if you're a hobbit. For that, I tend to be thinking, actually, what is the structure of my day? I check my diary, because everything is structured in my diary. and work out, where are the free bits of time I have. And when I talk about free time, I'm looking at how can I fill in that time with other to-do items, things that are necessary to get done that day. And when I'm looking at my day, I'm also thinking about some of those kind of key targeted things. So, what is important versus what is urgent, and making sure that I'm making those judgment calls. I'm also thinking about where I am in the world. So, for example, if I'm working from home, I'm sat at my desk, and actually I've got most of the facilities available to me. So that opens up nearly everything that I need to do. If I'm out and about, so I'm maybe travelling or I'm maybe on a client site, then I'll have less facilities available to me. And what I will do is I'll then look at what tasks I can do based on that. So for example, there may be some tasks that require internet connectivity. There may be others that require me to have a phone available with me. There may be others that I may need to be doing a bit of research. And I'll be choosing the tasks appropriate to what's happening at that point in time, or where I am at that point in time. I also look at how much time I have available, because if I've only got 2 or 5 minutes available to me, it's pointless starting to sit down and do a large piece of development work that's going to take me 2 or 3 hours, because by the time I've got my head into that space, it'll be time to finish, and it would have just been time wasted. So what I'll do is I'll look to fill that time with things that are time appropriate. So it might be, for example, I might be clearing out what's happening in Facebook, making sure that all those are updated, or I might be creating a video for LinkedIn, or I might be looking at some emails and clearing out some of those elements. So if those like 2 and 5 minute times that you have, that's great ways of being able to fill in those times. When you've got like half an hour or 40 minutes, those are some great development time. You may have heard of a thing called the Pomodoro principle, which is effectively you set yourself 30-35 minutes worth of time in blocks, and you work for that amount of time and see how much you can get done. But you work single-mindedly on one thing. And then that's it, just single-mindedly, one thing, 35-40 minutes, and it's done. And at the end of that 35-40 minutes, see where you're at. If you've got another 35-40 minutes, you can either continue on with that task, or you choose another task to get on with. And that kind of repeats throughout the day. Now, normally, in my working day, people tend to want to talk to me, certainly between the hours of 8 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock at night. So I will be taking lots of calls in that time, maybe coaching calls, maybe working with clients, maybe running workshops, online webinars, conference calls, a whole variety of things, or actually being on site delivering. Which then kind of means that actually when it comes down to some of the other tasks that I might want to do, such as some of the learning and development or research and development, I might be doing a lot of that actually what would have been classified as out of hours from the old corporate day. And it's interesting actually, if you've ever done something called an R&D claim when you're looking at your tax reports and things, if you do a lot of development in your business, you can actually claim tax back from the UK government for research and development, but that's only if somebody else does it. Because if you do it as the business owner, then it's classified as being for the love of the company. And it's kind of an interesting position, because the reality is that's what it is. It's the love of the company. You kind of got to enjoy what you're doing and find that happiness in there. And I think if you're in a position where you're kind of begrudging it, you're thinking, oh God, what the hell's going on yet again, then it may be that you're not doing the right thing. You're not fulfilling your kind of why realistically. And as such, you might want to think about actually how can you make your business fulfill your why? Because when you do get your business to fulfill your why and you're able to really help other people, all of a sudden time becomes fairly relevant. You make time happen, and things just fit together. For example, I now don't classify myself as having working time and non-working time. I just have time, and I will just use that time appropriately. So for today, for example, I was taking conference calls, I was working with another vendor for another one of my clients to make sure they've got the right products in place, and I was also spending time, took my daughter out for lunch, and we spent an entire afternoon just enjoying ourselves in the centre of York. We got her some new earrings and things because she needed them for school. But for that to work, you kind of have to let go a little bit of the structure of what you used to have in the corporate world and kind of embrace the flexibility of what you've got as an entrepreneur. It takes a bit of time to get used to it, but when you do, it's just marvellous. You kind of just suddenly have this amazing way of being able to use time to your advantage. So I kind of hope that answered your question, Biggie. I hope it's given you some good ideas and good advice from myself. If you do want to know anything more, drop me a private message. I'll quite happily send some more details, or it might be that we do a whole Q&A session based specifically on that if it's something that other people would like to know more about. So thank you very much for sending that through. Let's have a look, see what else we've got. I'm in a faction show still. Frank, I'm not too sure what you've said there. You said, sorry Martin, I'm in a faction show still. Can you try reword your question and I'll come back to it? What else we got here? Biggie, really good, thank you very much. Oh, I've seen that in every company. Self-made software. Oh, God, yes, self-made software. Self-made software can actually be really good. And actually, it's one of those kind of key things of innovation, because if you create things with building blocks, then you never know you could end up building something that works really well for your organization. And if you can then work out how you can create that as a supportable product, then that's great. And certainly when you look at things like agile development, that's the way a lot of things are working. And when I've been speaking to business owners and entrepreneurs and large businesses as well, thinking about what they're going to do with these new building block technologies that are available to them. A lot of people are coming back to this whole in-house development piece, so they can do something, fail quickly, fail fast, and fail cheaply. Because if you can get that kind of methodology working, where you're testing something constantly and not necessarily worrying about it being correct, then all of a sudden you've built a very agile way that actually adapts to the market as you need it to. And you kind of got to think about it. If you look at things like Companies House, for example, the UK government, they've been beta on their programme now for 10 years or something. Google, when it first launched, was in beta for 10 years. They didn't have a system that was there to work for all the time. So there's lots of different ways that you can actually see that that's a great way of being able to develop software and develop your processes. Wendy, I slot time in my diary each day for finance tasks, marketing tasks, etc. Absolutely, yeah, definitely. And sometimes I think it's also a case of, rather than thinking about it from a daily basis, think about what you've got over a weekly or a monthly basis, specifically things like finance, etc., where you don't necessarily have to be quite as rigid with it. Going to need to be daily. With things like marketing, etc., yeah, I can agree there's probably an amount that you need to do every day, but again, see what you can leverage with things like Buffer or other marketing tools that allow you to schedule things in, because again, that's another way of being able to get some of your time back. Also, when it comes down to scheduling your time in your diary, one of the things that I got taught years ago, and I found it works amazingly well, is think about what's the smallest unit of time that you can find useful. Because when you speak to people, and you can kind of actually gauge where their mind's at in many cases by doing this, if you speak to somebody and they're talking in the realm of days, so I'm going to spend this day doing this, or that day doing that, then what they're saying is they don't know how to manage their time beyond the day boundary. So that means that throughout that day, that 24 hours, do you really believe they're going to spend all that time doing it? Whereas actually, if you can break it down into maybe 15-minute chunks, and you're saying, okay, this 15-minute can be productive in this area, this 15-minute can be productive in that area, then all of a sudden, you've got now 4 times the amount of time back per hour. And when you compare it to actually the amount of time you've got in comparison to somebody who's planning on a daily basis, you've got nearly 100 times more time available to you, just simply because you're planning a much smaller unit of time when you're actually thinking about things. Now, that doesn't mean that you only spend 15 minutes doing something. Like I was saying before, with things like the Pomodoro principle, you might use that as a way of being able to concentrate on a singular task for 35-40 minutes, take a quick break, and then continue on again. And then that way you're clumping some of these 15-minute times together to give you a larger block, which allows you to then get even more done because you concentrate on one specific task at a time. But certainly, try it. It works really well, and it's interesting actually when you try and organise other people with regards to scheduling their diary. If you try and schedule people's diary on 10 past the hour or 5 past the hour or 15 minutes past the hour, most people cannot cope with it. Their mind just doesn't fit into it. But if you can kind of get to that position where actually you're just using time in the most efficient way possible, it's fantastic. You just suddenly find you've got so much extra time. Thank you very much, Biggie. I'm glad you found that useful. Oh, brilliant, Wendy. That sounds fantastic. Some HR software and you're commercialising it. That's brilliant. I'd love to hear more about that, and maybe it's something you can share with the group at some point. I'm sure everybody would be interested to hear more, not only about the software and what it does, but also about the journey that you've been on to be able to develop that. I know I've done a lot of developments for organisations and seen some of the things that worked well and some of those that haven't worked well. So definitely we'd love to hear from you and hear how that story went. Can I jump on this topic, Martin? It might work well if you have a theme of the day, social media content, new clients, research, admin, etc. I have an admin Friday for all emails, taxes and invoices, and a social media Monday to create new content, and the whole day is dedicated to this theme. Yeah, that's really good advice actually, Billiana. I do something similar. So once a month I sit down with my videographer and social media person, and we basically spend half a day recording all the videos for that month going ahead. We have kind of 4 themes, one for each week, and basically that's where we kind of script everything. Then they take it away, they build, create the videos for me, edit the videos, make sure they're okay, and then also come up with all the social media posts that go alongside it, and then on a weekly basis they kind of go through and we just check over before they're actually posted in there, and then we use things like Buffer to be able to help with that. Things like admin tasks, yep, absolutely. I must admit there's a lot of things now that I don't do in my business, and that's probably one of the other things you have to get used to is outsourcing what you can. So for a lot of my admin tasks I do have a PA that deals with that. So for instance, I give her all of my receipts, for example, and she goes through and she deals with all my expenses and things. I think one of the only admin tests that I kind of keep hold of is the invoicing, because I kind of enjoy that one. It feels it's a bit of fulfillment after we've done some really good work for people to be able to send the invoice in at the end of the month. So it's just one of those things that I personally like. So you don't have to outsource things if you don't want to, but certainly I find if you can leverage people around you that can help you make more productive time out of your day, then certainly do so. So for me, it's like the end of the month, so like last day of the month is usually my finance day, where I kind of send through all of the invoices, I kind of check over all the expenses, make sure, just look over my business scorecard, make sure that's going okay, and again the guys kind of get on with that and just send me the figures and things that I can do that. So it definitely makes it very useful. What else we got? Any more tips? So Billiana says, this way you chunk every important area in your business and you don't drop any of them for weeks. Agreed. Oh, about selling software. Okay, so some thoughts about selling software. Okay, so there's different types of models about selling software. So you've got the straight licensing model. So you sell them the software, they go away and install it, they use it. There's subscription models by which you will kind of hold on to the software and you will give them an ability to use that software for whenever they're using the oh dear. Okay, I think we're back on air again. We seem to have a bit dropped for a moment. So subscription models for where you're able to use it whenever the software, whenever you're paying for the software. Now, with selling software, you don't ever really want to sell the software itself. What you want to sell is what the software does for people. So when you think about anything that happens inside a business, there's kind of 3 aspects to it. You've got people, you've got processes, and you've got technology. Now, it's a bit like there's a whole psychology thing where if you ask somebody about what they want to do, well, what they'll do is they'll come up with the what first. Oh, we've got this shiny new widget, we're going to do this widget, etc. Then they'll go away and think, how am I going to do it? And they'll work out the how they're going to put this widget in place, and then eventually come back to the why they need it, and that kind of trips them up, because 9 out of 10 times they never needed it in the first place. They just liked the idea of it. There was no underlying business case to make it work, and from a business case perspective, there's only ever 3 reasons that you should put or do anything inside a business, because change is costly. Making any kind of change inside a business increases its risk. Things could go wrong, and also you've got the whole training aspect of it, the onboarding aspect of it, and you also have this interesting thing with regards to the adoption curve, where actually in the beginning there's a drop in productivity before you actually start to see the benefits of anything that's been changed inside an organisation. So when you're kind of thinking about how do I sell software, you got to think about which of the three elements does it actually address. So, for example, does it address the first one, which is, will this allow the business to continue to operate as a going concern? And for some bits of software, that is the case. So, for example, if you've purchased Microsoft Office 365 and you want to continue to run email systems extra next year, you will need to pay the money to keep going. That's a simple thing. And today, running without email or without some kind of technology systems in the background is a non-starter. I think we've well and truly passed the age where technology was a nice to have. I think that was probably about 10 years ago, if you ask me. That's what my belief is anyway. Then we kind of go on to the second option. So that is where, does this software help reduce my operational expenditure? Or does this process help to reduce my operational expenditure? And if it does, then what you're looking to do there is actually to help with the benefits. So how does it reduce the operational expenditure? What's going to be the reduction in operational expenditure? Where does that reduction come from? And highlight what those are. Then we kind of go to the third aspect, which is actually to do with revenue generation. So, will this piece of software help us make money in our business, and how will it help us make money in our business? And that's kind of the three key areas that you think about when it comes down to any kind of change, and how you can pin it back to one of those three areas. Now, when we overlay that with the thoughts about the people, the process and the technology, we then start to build this into a pattern, because if we can identify who is inside the organisation that would benefit from these things, and then understand how it's going to benefit them. So, for example, how's the process going to change? And then we can actually then slide in the technology, because technology should only ever be put inside a business to make life easier. It should be there to automate things and be a benefit of stuff. But so many times people kind of shoehorn technology in because they believe it's the right thing, or the mate's doing it, or this business X did it, or whatever. And they haven't really thought through actually what part of the business is it automating. And what happens then is the software creates the adverse effect. What it does is it actually creates more problems than what it was ever put in place to solve. Whereas doing it the right way and thinking about this from the people first, then the process, then the technology, it's the same as that whole psychological model of actually saying, why do I need this? What is it I need? And how am I going to do it? And by applying those kind of models together, plus identifying which kind of change scenario it benefits the business with, all of a sudden you've got a much more compelling argument, because then you can turn around and say, this is the reasons why I've got it. So if I was going to speculate, I don't know anything about your software, Wendy, but if I was going to speculate at this point in time, I'm kind of guessing that actually your software will probably hit a couple of buttons. The first one being is around actually maintaining themselves as a going concern. Because there's lots of HR regulations out there. Businesses have a duty of care. We've got to keep certain records, and I'm pretty confident that your software probably deals with some of those elements of it. So that's one element for that. You've also then got the piece around operational expenditure. How can you reduce operational expenditure? And this can be done in a number of different ways. And again, I'm kind of guessing about your HR software, but it might be, for instance, that you can reduce the number of sick days because you're able to identify people's issues quicker. You're able to communicate them quicker. There's a way of being able to dashboard things. So whether you're using the 9-point grid model or something like that actually helps you identifies where the shining stars are versus where the people are almost out the door are. So there's lots of ways you can tie that back into the model. And it could be, for instance, you could even say this can help us generate more business. So, for example, if you can identify where the rising stars are in a business, specifically a professional services business, then you can look at how you can promote the right people at the right time into the right roles so that they can actually become better revenue generators and become more effective in their roles. So hopefully that might have given you a few thoughts about how I would have probably approached selling your piece of software, or certainly the kind of messages I would pull around them. And hopefully that's kind of been of some help. So let's continue looking further down. Thank you, Frank. So it was not a question, it was telling that you was listening but watching a fashion show. Fantastic. I hope the fashion show is going well. You'll have to tell us more about that one later, definitely. Thank you, Wendy, for offering to share. That'd be great. I think we'll definitely get together and we'll work out how we can do that. Billiana, that's because you are good with shooting in half a day. You will get there. And to me, the thing that took me from taking 1, 2, 3 days to shoot things to taking half a day was just getting over myself and realizing that I can't be a perfectionist. You know, this is me. I don't get any better than this. So if you don't like it, you're probably not the right person to work with. But hopefully what I'm doing at the same time is giving away some great content that's helping to move people forwards. And it kind of took me back actually to a decision that I made, 10, 15 years ago, which actually, it was a silly thing. It was around having a tie on. I hate wearing a tie. Absolutely loathe it. It just feels restrictive, it's tight, it's uncomfortable. I don't think they look very nice either. They just get in the way of things. As soon as you've got it dipped in your soup, that's it, you're stuffed, everything just gets coated. So I just decided actually I was not going to wear a tie. I came across a couple of opportunities when I was working back there where people were very much opinionated that I should be wearing a tie. I'm in a professional organisation representing people that are looking to save or make millions or billions, and as such, I should be coming with wearing a tie. And it was like, okay, well, if you're really worrying only about the tie, if that's your biggest concern, then the reality is you're probably not the right people to work with, because if you're concerned about something as daft as a tie, what else are you going to be concerned if that's irrelevant? What bits are you worrying about that you shouldn't be doing, and what bits are you not worrying about that you should be doing? So for me, I kind of then took that thought when I had it and recognised it again with the shooting videos, and thought, actually, let's just do it. We'll just get out of the way. So what you'll probably find is, if you look at some of my videos, some of them aren't 100%. I think there's some places where I stumble over my words. There's some places where I don't fit in the model quite correctly. There's all sorts of little things, and I look back at them and think, oh, God, I do that some days. But the reality is, it's out there. My content's there, and hopefully it's helping some people. And certainly from the messages that I'm getting back from people are finding it really helpful. So hopefully that kind of gives you the same inspiration. Just go for prolific, not perfect. 50% is the new brilliant. Okay. Biggie, totally relate. Excellent, hear that. Ticks all 3 boxes. Nicely done, Wendy. That sounds good. Billiana, could you have that on a recording, Wendy? Brilliant advice. Thank you. Wendy, cool, thanks. No, I'm listening more to you, Martin. Okay, thank you, Frank. Great to hear that one. Oh, it's one day from the idea concept of a raw video, not just shooting. I got over that time and to wash my hair and put her makeup on and iron clothes and do all that. Yeah. I still put clothes on, I do admit. I do not do anything without clothes, so that's still a really good one for me. But yeah, my hair washing doesn't tend to take too much. First thing in the morning usually is what I tend to do there. Okay. 50% is the new perfect. Yeah, spot on. Okay, guys, that seems to be the end of the questions. If I've missed you, I do apologise. It's certainly not intentional. And if you do have any further questions, then please feel free to raise them. Like last time, if they do appear in the group after we've kind of finished this call today, then what I will do is I will address them at the next Q&A session. If this is something that has been really useful for you, then please give me lots of thumbs up, smiley faces, whatever in the group, and what I'll do is I'll try and arrange we'll arrange another one if it's been of much use for everybody in 2 weeks' time. So please feel free to get your questions out there. I'm loving the atmosphere we're kind of building here, and let's help build our growing, profitable and sustainable businesses together. So without further ado, I'll leave you saying have fun. Bye for now.